All right, so those are the few admin updates. Now we can transition to the educational session. So again, the topic for today's educational session is a path toward a metaverse standard by Leonardo Chiariglione from MPAI. And I'll just give a brief background and then I'll hand over the presentation to Leonardo himself. So Leonardo Chiariglione obtained his PhD degree from the University of Tokyo. During his career, he launched several initiatives such as MPEG in 1988, which he left in 2020 and is now closed, and Moving Picture Audio and Data Coding by Artificial Intelligence, which is MPAI, in 2020, which has produced 13 standards in the area of AI-enabled data coding since its establishment in September 2020. He is currently the CEO of CDO.net, a company advising multinational companies and developing its own portfolio of technologies, products, and services such as Vim.tv. He's the recipient of several awards, among these the Edward Rain Foundation Award, the IBC John Tucker Award, the IEEE Masaru Ibuka Consumer Electronics Award, and the Kilby Foundation Award. So we are excited to have you, Leonardo. So feel free to unmute and take control of the presentation.
Very good. Okay. Thank you for inviting me to give a short overview of the results of a project that well engaged us for the last 3 years. It was beginning of 2022 that we started considering the metaverse as a strong unification factor in many of our activities, and so we put resources there. It was at the beginning of 2023 when we published the first technical specification. In April, the second technical specification. Then we had the first version of the architecture standard in October, and last day of September, we approved two twin specifications, the architecture and the technology. So I will be talking about that. So what is the metaverse? So many definitions, but so the one that you see here is very synthetic. Of course, it would mean too many things that is intended. But on the other hand, I think that saying that metaverse is something where you can have humans that have a second life with their avatars. Certainly intellectually attractive, but it's not necessarily the only way you can have a useful metaverse. So keeping it general is useful. Then the question is, okay, but is it really going to be needed, or is there sufficient driver for that? Well, it is because it can be adapted to many human activities. Then the next question is it a sure bet? Well, very few things, if any, are sure in this world, but I would say that it must happen. It cannot. It would be very strange if it did not happen, because there's so much convergence of technologies. But what is important is to say that there are basically two approaches, which of course they are not specific to the metaverse, but to many technology endeavors. So you have industry players designing and implementing metaverses that suit their own needs, but there's also standard one or more standard bodies specifying the metaverses for many users. And of course, the Metaverse Standard Forum is a great facilitator in that second approach. So of course, approach one is costly and risky, but there are big gains if it succeeds. The second is doable, but and again, the MPAI Metaverse Forum is doing a lot to share ideas and develop consensus about main areas. So anyway, in the case of MPAI, we opted for approach 2, and that is what I will be talking about. So just 2 words about what we did. We had a very intense year, first year, that 2022, where we developed many considerations. And the result was moved to 2 technical reports, which are not standards, but they are simply a collection of useful ideas. So what are the classes of application that are served by the metaverse? What is the state of technologies and what the prospect of technology requires for the metaverse? And which are the main business players whose cooperation is needed to have metaverses in places. So that was the content of, but then we started with the actual technology work, which is just kind of special, and I will describe why. So a metaverse should be able to hold dialogues with clients in the metaverses. And the dialogues should concern things that are related to the business of the metaverse, of course. And this business is, in a way, largely, but not exclusively, replicas of things that happen in the real world. In order for metaverses to be able to have these dialogues, they should understand what the metaverse are asking it to do, or what is they are expecting them to do, and request other metaverses to do things, but in an understandable way. So again, in the spirit of helping metaverses understanding each other, like humans do, so we probably it would help to think of a metaverse as handling verbs, nouns, and complements. And therefore, we need to have a definition of them, and therefore their semantics. So then we started selecting and specifying the verbs and the nouns and the complements, and this took quite some time. So for instance, what is the example of a verb? We want to capture them. So we are asking the metaverse, or the metaverse decides for some reason to capture an object or a scene in the universe and place it somewhere in the metaverse. It can do its own, but it can be some other metaverse as well. But that is more complicated case, and we'll leave it till later. Animate a model with a stream and place it somewhere in the metaverse, and this is very much your business. And then render an object located somewhere in the metaverse to somewhere in the universe. Then we should select and specify the functional requirements of nouns representing the entities in the metaverse and in the universe. And then we need the complement that what connect the verbs with the nouns. And finally, we need to verify that the selection that we have made are adequate for the intended metaverse needs. So this gives more or less the original plans, and also how much we have implemented that original plan. So then, if we do this, then we can have independent parties building metaverses that identify actions and items and reason about them, about their relationship, complements, and similar ways. And then that's good if we have a similar way to addressing things, but then if we want to communicate the result of their considerations, they need a common language, because without a common language, we will need an interpreter. And this is the stepping stone to the next challenge. So the common language should allow to seamlessly express the thoughts of Metaverse A, so that Metaverse B can understand Metaverse A's speech acts. And then, of course, if we have the common language, then interpreted is no longer redundant. Still, this is theoretically sufficient, but practically not, because behind the neutral name noun, it is, I mean, they are maybe different. Complex technology may be implied, and you are certainly handling with some of them. So we may be, well, for instance, we can, the noun can be an avatar, but saying that it is an avatar is at the beginning of the conversation. Then we have to say much more about it. So then we have the issue of formats. For instance, to execute the speech act, capture an object in the universe and place it somewhere in a metaverse, we need to know the formats of the captured object that is used by the sensor. And this, of course, implies the type of sensor that is attached to the metaverse. The representation of the captured object in the metaverse, and this impacts the client ability to access the metaverse and perceive the objects that are placed in the metaverse. Then of course, okay, so this is clear, but is this the time to make this technology choices, which is what a standard is supposed to do, and this is what MPAI did for 32 years during its existence. The answer is particularly from that experience, but I'm not the only one, of course. It is we are not ready to make choices for important technologies, and therefore it's more prudent to only signal the choices that are made by the entity generating the data. So if we say that it is an avatar, we have to describe the choices, but not standardize the choices. So this is a part of the plate, but we have a practical issue that we say at the beginning that metaverse is for many, but if it is for many, there are many sometimes diverging needs. So supporting certain part of a metaverse may be costly in terms of technology. So this is not provocative, but what if we don't need avatars? There are examples where avatars are not actually needed. So why should there be in the implementation avatars that are never needed? But still, this avatar should have this. I'm sorry. This metaverse should have some confidence that it can talk to a class of other metaverses. In exactly 30 years ago, at the time we approved the MPAI 2 standard, we formalized the existence of profiles. Profiles are sets of technologies drawn from one standard or from more than one standards, but only a subset. And this subset can be put together to solve a particular problem. So then profiles is the solution, and that is the solution that we also implement. So what are, as in summary, the things that we set out to do to define the semantics of verbs, nouns, and complements, to define a common language, to define a signaling mechanism to convey information about the technology choices, then definition of profiles, and then carry out a verification process of the goodness and sufficiency of what we have done. And someone has already done it. And so MPAI is the name of the entity that did it. So we are an international affiliated not-for-profit organization. We developed AI-based data coding standards, and Interestingly and importantly, we do that with clear intellectual property right licensing frameworks. Here we have a more complete definition of metaverse. By the way, we call M instances what is the MPAI word of metaverse. But I don't think that it is so important to review that. Let me go to into something that is more directly usable. Metaverse instance is administratively subdivided in M environments. It allows humans to register, and the human gives personal profiles and obtains the right to deploy users, devices, and persona. We'll see more about these terms. A metaverse is implemented, or is supposed to, or acts as if it is implemented as a set of process that they have process capabilities. And with this process capability, they can perform process actions on items. And if they hold the rights to do that, and of course, rights is an important element in all this, they can request other process to perform actions. And they do that by sending a request action and obtaining a response action. And perform the request if the requested process holds the rights to perform the requested process on the item. So this is the inter-process protocol. So the content of the request action, the content of the response action, I mean, they're all very reasonable, but of course, I would need to add some words because they are some implication in it. Then it enables the process to communicate to another metaverse instance using the resolution service. So we assume that the metaverse instance has a resolution service to talk to another metaverse, but also has the possibility to access a conversion service if certain data formats are not available. So this is a summary of the inter-M-instance protocol, which is, well, implies that you have a process A1 here, wants to talk to process B1 here, so it sends a request action to the resolution service. The resolution service forward the request action to the resolution service here, and then the resolution service sends the request action to the target process. And of course, the target process may not have available all the technology to handle the request, and therefore it uses a conversion service. Then it produces a response action that follows a similar path backward. And of course, the process A1 may need a conversion service in order to perform, well, to understand the response. So we have 4 types of processes. One is the device. I mean, the name is sufficiently clear. User, that is may require more words because it represents and is under the control of a human that is registered in the M instance. And then we have service that provides a specific function. And we also have apps, but they are not so important. So this is a picture that describes a little bit what we have in mind. So we have a human, and then there is a device. Through the device, it can drive, if that is the desire. But it can be, it can drive directly the user. But you know, it can also just the user can be an autonomous agent that is simply under the control of the human but acts autonomously. Then the user can communicate with other processes, devices, user, and devices. And what is important is that the persona is not the user. The persona is the rendering of the user if the user needs to be rendered, but that is not necessarily the case. And of course, a user need not have just one persona; can have more than one persona. So this is a little summary of some of the main elements. And so this is another picture, but it's a simpler than the one that we had before. But you see that the human on the left hand side uses a device to drive the user, which can be manifested as a persona. Then the user interacts with other processes and can talk to a resolution service that talks to another resolution service, and so on and so on. So let's go to the concretely to what we have done. So we have 4 types of processes. Apps, devices, services, and users. For the time being, I think much has been said already, so we can go to the next point, which is more interesting. So the action corresponds to the verbs. So what do we have here? Well, we have general actions, actions that concern calling a service, action that concerns when an action in the metaverse has a result in the metaverse, when an action in the metaverse is a result of the universe, and when an action in the universe is a result of the metaverse. So if you go to the general action here, for instance, a change. Change is, okay, you have some rights, but you don't have the right to come to my house, so I give you some temporary rights to come to my house. Authenticate, that is rather clear. Then we have, for instance, author. Author is, of course, a basic element that you have. Discover is when you want a service to help you find something that you need, and you need a proper description of it. Or interpret is you see something that is not clear. It can be just a speech in a language that you don't know, is an example, but it can be more complex than that. And then, of course, you have transact, which is a fundamental element of a metaverse. Then we have embed is when we embed a thing, an object, somewhere in the metaverse, which has the equivalent disable is when you make the object no longer visible, and then you have actuate when from the metaverse you want to actuate something in the universe, and animate when you are capturing the animation of an object or a human in the universe. So there is a collection that is there are about 30, I think. And we find that it's certainly it's not going to be the end of the list, but you can do quite a few things with that. Then we have the items, and this is much more complicated. We have 65 items that we have identified. So we have general items like contract, and capabilities. So it's a collection of the capabilities of the metaverse. So you're visiting a metaverse, you want to know what it can do, how it can do it. Rules is very important, of course, is what governs the metaverse. Rights are how you manage rights to do things. Account, activity data, personal profile, personal data, of course, very important. P capabilities, the capability of a process. Process action is quite fundamental, but I'm not sure I will have the time to do it. Request action and response action are part of the inter-process protocol. Then we have, well, in finance, we have the notion of asset, currency, provenance, transaction, value, and wallet. So all these are defined by by JSON syntax and semantics. In terms of perception, so this is here we have drawn everything, I would say, from whether the was done at the same time in other groups of MPAI. So we have audio things, audio objects, audio scenes. Then we have visual scenes, visual objects, and we have audio visual scenes and objects. And then we have an interesting area that is called internal state. This again is simply inherited from an existing standard that is called multimodal conversation, whereby we try to specify the internal state of a human or an avatar for that matter. So cognitive state is how much is your level of knowledge of the context for the purpose of the conversation that you're having. What is your emotional state? What is your social attitude? So you're having a difficult conversation with someone. Do you want to be aggressive, or do you want to have a more condescending attitude? I mean, all this is included there. Then we have things that relate to space and time. So we have M location, we have orientation, point of view, position. We have a space time. Spatial attitude is a basic element. It's simply says position, orientation, and their velocities and acceleration. Universe Metaverse map was introduced because we had an interesting use case a la Pokemon. So we are provided the items that allow you to implement that use case, and potentially it is useful for other use cases as well. So process action is the big thing, because here we are coming into integration of the many elements that I have described. What is process action? Is the actions that the process has performed or can, will, or ask to perform on an item. But it's not just to perform an item, because it depends also on the time. It depends on the data or data metadata generating it, where in the metaverse and in the universe. And then we have the complements, and these are the complements that we need. There are 7 of them, and they are used appropriately in order to perform. So this is all the elements of the language I was talking about, because we have the means to package all a process action in such a way that it's very compact, first of all, and it can immediately communicate it to another process. So this is if I had, which I don't think I have, time, I would practice the use of process actions. So for instance, embed. So there's a user that does 2 things. First, places the thing, but the thing is no longer visible, and then enables visibility of the thing. And it does that where? At an M location, position in the metaverse, with a spatial attitude, of course. So this is an example of how we can have complete actions called process actions that can be executed or can be communicated to another process. So this I would really love to show you the application of the MMM scripting language that we have developed. So this is in the case when we have a teacher. All this is in the virtual space, of course. And the teacher is teaching dancing And of course, it needs to have um, haptic abilities. Otherwise, this is not feasible. So teaches dancing to a student, then another student comes, and in this case, the teacher duplicates itself. Um, so there is an autonomous agent that continues dancing with the student number one, and the teacher dances with student number two. So the interesting thing is that the 30 or so um, actions and the 65 um, items that we have defined are sufficient to implement on paper, of course, but this is a verification use case to implement this use case. And then we have another 8 use cases in different areas. And the conclusion is that we are reasonably sure that we can cover a significant number of use cases with the current specification that are now publicly available. There is a time to respond with comments to the Secretariat, and we will gladly consider your comments. And if there is an agreement, we will introduce them in the final specification that will be approved, presumably on the 23rd of this month. So with that, I look forward to working with you on this exciting MPAI project. Join MPAI, share fun, and build the future is our motto. And I'm happy to respond to any question.
Amazing. Thank you, Leonardo. Great session. Good to see what the MPAI been building in the metaverse space. Yeah, I think the whole idea of using actions and sharing it across different metaverses were very interesting. And just one quick question from my end is how are you thinking about facilitating those actions, right? Is there a compute behind it which will take requests from all the different metaverses and then process it? And would that be centralized, or are you thinking of a decentralized facilitator compute who will be operating these actions?
Well, the standard cannot go into, a standard could go into this kind of specification, but it would not be advisable. It would put limits. So we are introducing the notion of process, and the process is something that is running in the metaverse. It can be run on a centralized platform. It can run on a distributed platform. It can run on an application of your device. We are open to all cases. For all of this configuration, we have different security concerns. That is obvious. But we are trying to define a model that is generic as much as possible and much as feasible.
Got it. And how are you thinking of Web3 into this ecosystem? Does Web3 is it important here, or the systems apply to both Web2 and Web3 use cases?
This is a good question, and we did spend quite some time in the first year to establish relationship. But if you see here, so you see contract, right? So maybe this is a time to go to a practical application of what we have done. So this is the specification of contract, which is made of definition, functional requirements, syntax, and semantics. And so here you will see that so we do not assume that there is for instance, a blockchain that supports the contract. Of course, if there is a blockchain, we are all happy to use that facility, but the specification does not assume that there must be a blockchain to support the contract. So they just to show you how it is done. We have so contract ID. Of course, you need that. The Metaverse ID, where this contract is valid. Then we have the contract data qualifier. So this is something I've not given a word so far, if not at the beginning, about the fact that we need to signal the technology. So qualifier is a data type that we have introduced where we can give the type, the format, and the attributes of a contract. So we don't specify a contract. We specify an envelope, which is the contract qualifier, where you can indicate what kind of contract we are talking about, and size and so on. So this is, I hope that everything is okay. It is. So this is how it is done. You see, we have the contract ID. We have the contract data qualifier, and this is specified here. We can have a look at what how it looks like. Okay, so here it says that we have distinguished between a non-executable formats, and so and this is just an enumeration. So an enumeration or non-executable format, an enumeration of non-blockchain based formats, and blockchain-based format. So this is what we say. So this is simply a list of possibilities that you can use to communicate what contract we are talking about. And of course, if you are in a specific environment, then the qualifier need not be sent, because the contract is the contract that is valid for a particular implementation.
Got it. Yeah, thank you for sharing this. Check it offline. Any other questions for Leonardo from the members? Yeah, see, Joe has unmuted. Joe, you have a question?
Yes, I was just thinking about the mention of rights and so forth. How much of this is open and sort of free, and how much is bound by some sort of rights that need to be obtained somehow, or some revenue stream derived from using the system, or is how open?
Okay. So this is a very good question. This is very fundamental question. So when a human registers with an M instance, it is asked to provide some personal data, possibly asked to make a transaction. After that, it receives the right to import users and persona, users, but also any other processes as well. And to each process, the metaverse assigns rights that are established rights. Let me go to here sorry, so that I get data types, so that I can go to. So here we are to the rights. Very good. So you see, we have a level of rights. So when you get your user, for instance, imported into the metaverse based on your subscription, you get internal rights. I can say, for instance, that the users have the right to move in public places. Well, that is obvious. But then also to go to particular places that are not otherwise open. So these are the internal rights. Then the user, through its activity, may decide to acquire rights by making transactions. Or by performing an action requested by another process, or in the example that I made before, another process can grant rights to this process, to my process, to go for instance to their house. So we are currently making an implementation of this specification, and one use case that we will support is the process, which is not a simple one, by the way, whereby I invite you, so my user invites your user to come to the user house. And in that case, you need to grant rights, otherwise your user would not be able to enter my space, my house. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Yes, I think so. I get an idea there. Yeah. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, thanks, Leonardo, and thanks, Joe, for a great question. We are out of time. So what we can do is there's few admin stuff that I'll quickly update, and then we'll have another few minutes of water cooler session, where if any member have additional questions, we can use the water cooler session to get answers from Leonardo.